Music theory with Excel. Chords named by mode and modal half step, this time building chords from the Aeolian mode, otherwise known as the minor scale, basically building minor or Aeolian mode chords. So get ready and some coffee because you ain't never seen rockin' unless you excel at rockin', and you cannot excel at rocking without Microsoft Excel. Otherwise, you don't even know what you're doing. You don't even know what you're doing. We are in Excel. If you don't have access to this workbook, that's okay because we basically built this from a blank worksheet, but started in a prior presentation. So if you want to build this entire worksheet from a blank sheet, you could begin back there or just continue constructing as we go from here. If you do have access to this workbook, though, 4 tabs down below. Fretboard, example, practice, blank. The fretboard tab having a simulated fretboard, we will refer back to the example tab having the finished product, in essence, the answer key. The practice tab has pre-formatted cells, so you can practice the practice problem with less Excel formatting, but if you don't have any of that, that's okay because we'll be working in the blank tab where we started from scratch with a blank worksheet, but we'll be continuing in the blank part of the worksheet, this time practicing our Excel skills as well as our music skills at the same time, remembering those are actually one and the same thing if you really think about it. All right, let's go down to the fretboard over here and get an idea of what we're doing. We're building our chords in the most intuitive way possible. Remembering our analogy, I just want to reiterate it, drill it home. This is what we're looking at. We're looking at the fretboard, the map of the territory. We're comparing to the globe, which has 7 continents. We have 7 locations on our fretboard. Now note that there are actually 12 locations, but the other non-continent locations are like the oceans. We go through them, but we want to get to a place of land because that's where we can hang, man. The ocean gets scary after a while. So then if we take our perspective from space, kind of like our perspective from looking onto the fretboard, we can see that the fretboard could be rotated around in a circle as the world turns. And as the world turns, we can then pick a point of vantage to be able to find where the location that we want to go is on the spinning world. Once we've learned that, then we don't want to rename the continents. I then want to say, hey, look, I'm on the C and the related notes, the collection of 7 notes around the C major, this collection of 7 notes around the B, the collection of 7 notes around the A sharp. If I do that, then the world turning will all have the same continents that have the same relative relationship to each other, right? And then I just want to use the name of the continents, which is like the Nashville number system, 1 through 7, that we don't change, absolute modal numbering system, or the modes, the Ionian, the Dorian, the Phrygian, the Lydian, the Mixolydian, and so on and so forth. The problem, naming conventions mess us up, meaning distance often uses a scale degree terminology, which makes us renumber the modes. The chords often use a numbering system based on the major scale, but then changes the numbering system when we go into other modes, such as like the Mixolydian. It wants to make the 5 the 1, or the Aeolian, it wants to make the 6 the 1. That's going to make things more complicated on the guitar. We want to not do that if we could, and keep the same numbering system, but also be able to communicate with people that are using different numbering systems, so we bridge the gap. And when we name the chords, we end up naming them with a name that doesn't tell us where the chord is located on the fretboard. So if I'm in the major scale and I play the 1, and then I go to the 6 over here, then from that perspective, I know it's the 6, therefore it's going to be a minor chord, but we call it an A minor, and we also call like the Dorian a minor. So I'd like to be able to see that there's a difference between the A minor and the Dorian. So in other words, the 2 chord is different. The 2 chord is different than the 6 chord. If we think of it from a modal standpoint, if we expand past just a 3-note chord, that helps us to visualize where we are on the fretboard. It's functionally better to do, to be able to say the 1, 4, 5 is not all the same because it's a different location on the fretboard. The 1, 4, 5 is different. The 2, 6, the 2, 3, and 6 are different, right? They're in different parts on the fretboard. That's useful to know. Okay, so this time we're going to go into the Aeolian, which is otherwise known as the minor scale. So remember, what they try to do in Western music is like eliminate the modes. It's kind of like us in America over here, where they're like, I don't like the French names or the Greek names, right? And so I'm just going to rename it so the major key is now the major key. That's what it is. It's not the Ionian mode. I'm not doing that. It's going to be the major key, and then the Aeolian. If I'm going to say, okay, maybe we want to play some Aeolian because they were mainly playing major, which was the Ionian, and so then we're going to rename the Aeolian because that's Greek name. I don't like that, so we're going to call it the minor scale because it's subordinate to the major scale, which it was the ultimate thing at the time. But the minor scale is quite important these days, of course, and really the modes are a thing. So we should bring the modes back. We should bring them back. Okay, just because they sound a little different, a little foreign, doesn't mean that we should just call them a different name, or just give them a number. We should bring back the modes. Okay, so that's what we're doing. So we've got then, we did this for the Ionian, the Dorian, the Phrygian, the Lydian, the Mixolydian. We're going to the Aeolian, which once again is the second most used scale in Western music, but not called Aeolian. So it almost sounds like Italian. I'm not sure that's probably not how Greek people talk. They're not, I'm not sure, but I still say Aeolian, Aeolian. Okay. So anyways, we're going to say so this is the second most used one, right? So what would we call it? It would be an A minor normally, A minor. And so now we have an A minor, we have a D minor, and we have an E minor in our normal 2-3-6. Now that's kind of nice because they're all the same and the shape would be the same, but the problem is, again, they're different locations. So I would rather call it that this is the 2, 3, and 6 with a permanent numbering system, because that helps me determine that they are not the same. I want them to functionally be different when I'm playing on the guitar. So I'd rather say, no, this is the Aeolian, which I could say is A2 or something like that, Aeolian, Aeolian 2. And if it was the tonic, maybe we call it an AA2. So what does that mean? It's the A is the root. It's an Aeolian mode, which would be a minor, same shape as a minor, but it's in the Aeolian place in the master shape and the big shape on the diatonic scale. And we go 2 modal whole steps up from that root. So it's a 3-note chord. So if I went over here and we started on the Aeolian, from a scale degree standpoint, it would be the 1, the 3, and then the 5. The 1, 3, and the 5. So that would be the idea of it. Let's go over here and map it out. Now, if I look at distance, what I'd like to do is say, okay, look, this is the Aeolian. I want to keep it as the 6. I don't want to rename it as the 1. I want to say that's the 0 that we're going to be on, and then we just go up 2 modal half steps, and then another 2 modal half steps, or 4, meaning we take 2 modal half steps up from the root, which I don't want to rename, but keep as the 6. But if we want to do the scale degree system, then to convert it, all you do is basically say the scale degrees are off by 1. So I just increase the correct way to measure things by 1. So we could say, okay, if this is the 1, let me just do it because I want to be able to see it. So this is going to be 1 plus 2, and this is going to be 1 plus 4. So from a scale degree standpoint, we would make the 6 the 1, and then say from that standpoint, we have a 1, 3, 5 perspective. But that's a problem because it doesn't allow me to really name. I'd like to be able to name the chord, the 1, 3, 5, in a universal way, and so you can kind of move the 1, 3, 5 around, but I'd like to keep it as the 5, right? So that even if I'm in another scale and I went into the Aeolian mode, or if I was playing in another key, right, then the minor, then I'd still, when I get to the Aeolian, recognize it's Aeolian, right? And I don't want to name it by notes because, again, those will be changed when I go to different keys. So I'd like to know it by modal point. So I'd like to say, look, I'm on the 6. Now it did that again. I got the hiccups. So this is going to be 6 plus 2. So it's 6 plus 2. I can only have 7, so I'm going to double click on that and say minus 7. So it goes from the 6, 7 to the 1, and then it goes from the 6 plus 4 minus 7. So in other words, or 1 to 3. So that means that I can name it by saying, look, we have the Aeolian, we have the Ionian, and we have the Phrygian. So when I play a minor chord, I can name it in a universal way the notes that are going to be played by the continent, but not by note name, by location, by the nodes. It's going to be the 613. That's what I'm going to hold down if I keep the Nashville numbers node system the same. That's beautiful on the guitar. I feel like people don't really see how like useful that is because that is movable. It's totally movable. It's not on the piano. That's because the piano has different shapes when you go through the black and white keys. So maybe that's part of the reason this doesn't happen. But I still think it would work on the piano pretty well as well. So again, it's like from a functional standpoint, there really is no reason not to kind of do that. What if we all right, well, what if we had a 4-note chord? Well, normally it would be an A, we would call that an A minor 7. And now because it's a minor, the 7's the minor, the 7 would be a scale degree, so we'd still have the 1, 3, 5, and then we assume we just tack on the next one, which would be a 7, which we're going to say is minor because it says it's minor before the 7. So we assume it has a minor third and a minor 7. But we could just say, as easily say it's an AA3, meaning it's an Aeolian A. The A is the note we're on, and it's a 4-note chord, which means it starts at the root plus 3 modal whole steps up. So I don't need to name it by the 7th scale degree. I can just say, no, you just skip every other note in the key in the scale from the Aeolian, right? From this mode, you just skip every other note in the collection of notes, and all of our 7 notes are in a circle. So it's easy to do that. And we could, if it was the root, call it an AA3. And then, so how would we build it? We'd say, okay, well, let's take a look at it first. So if I go over here, from a scale degree standpoint, we'd make this the 1, even though I'd like to keep it as the 6, right? And then we go up 2, and then that would be the 3, and then we go up 2, and then that would be the 5, and then we go up 2, and that would be the 7. So that there's what we would have it. And so, but if I saw it from a distance measurement kind of convention, we would be starting on the Aeolian, and then we would go, that would be the 0, because it's actually, we don't want to rename it, it's actually number 6 of our normal modes. But then we go up 2, and then another 2 to 4, and then another 2 to 6. All right, how do we convert that to scale degrees? Well, the scale degree convention is all off by 1, so we can just take the distances and add 1, because they included the note that they are on, which is stupid, but that's okay. We're going to say it's 1 plus 2, and then it's going to be 1 plus 4, and 1 plus 6. So from a normal scale degree, if we make the 6 the 1, then it would be a 1, 3, 5, 7. But I don't want to make the 6 the 1 because I'd like to be able to name all of the points that I'm going to be holding down with my fingers by location, which would be easier to do if I keep the 5 the 5, right? Or the 6 the 6. Sorry, I keep on saying 5 because I'm still on Mixolydian. The 6 the 6. And then I could say it's going to be 6 plus 2 minus 7, let's say. And then, we're going to say this is going to be 6 plus 4 minus 7. And then this is going to be 6 plus 6 minus 7. And then, so that means that I'm going to hold down with my fingers the Aeolian, the Ionian, the Phrygian, the Mixolydian, or from a Nashville number system, we're just going to hold down with our fingers the locations on the fretboard of the 6, 1, 3, 5. You see, I can't say that with the scale degrees unless I remember the scale degrees from 7 different positions, which is ridiculous, unless possibly you're on a piano where that might make sense because you have different fingerings for the 12 different keys. But I'm not on the piano, and I'm not even sure that would be the best way to do it on the piano. But even if it was, you're not telling me to do it that way on my guitar. when that's not the optimal way to do it. That's not the optimal way to do it, and I'm going to do it the optimal way. All right, well, what if we're talking about a 5-note chord? So this will be an A minor 9. Now, this is deceptively weird because, one, we have the 9, which means the scale degree goes up to 7, and therefore we went up to 9 instead of going back to the 2. Also, when you're in the main minor scale, the minor mode, you would expect everything except the perfects, the perfect 4th and the perfect 5th, to be minor, but not the case for the 2, which is also the 9, which is major. So we'll talk more about this when we get to the intervals. And with the normal convention, what happens is we assume that this minor name applies to the 3rd and the 7, but does not, for some reason, apply to the 9, 11, and 13, which also seems a little bit odd. This will all make more sense once we get into intervals, but it's deceptively kind of complex, even though it looks like a pretty simple naming convention. It would be easier to say it's an A4, an Aeolian A 5-note chord, which means it has the root, which is the A in this case, plus 4 modal half steps in the key would just go up 4 from that point. And so we could call it an AA4 this way if it was the root. Let's look at it over here and say, all right, if I was on the Aeolian, we'd go from the Aeolian from a scale degree standpoint, skipping every other note. Aeolian, I would be the 1, this would be the 3, the 5, 6, 7, and then 9. The 9 here equivalent to the 2. All right, that would be the general idea. So if I scroll on back over, so now we're going to say, all right, let's go ahead and do our modal half steps. So we're going to say this will be equal to the Aeolian. And let's delete that, get out of here thing. So normally we'd start on the root, which is going to be the 6, plus 2, plus another 2 to 4, plus another 2 to 6, plus another 2 to 9. How can we convert that to scale degrees? Well, the scale degrees are all off by 1, so we just increase all of these by 1. So we can say it would be the Aeolian, and if this was the 1, then it pulled it over for us over here. Let's just do it, though. Let's do it. This would be, let's do it this way this time. This would be 1 plus 2, which would be the 3, and I can copy that across. Boom. So it would be the 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. And by the way, this one should be 8. I don't know where I came up with a 9 there. So, and then it would convert to 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. All right, but that's a problem because I don't want to call this the 1. I want to keep that its name, which from a Nashville music system is the 6. So I'm going to say, no, I don't want, so I want to keep this as the 6. I'll pull it all the way over here. Why? Because then I can make a, I'm going to make this blue and bordered. Blue and bordered. Then I can make a chord based on the continent names that are permanent in like the Nashville music system node names, which are the same as the actual modes, right? So I could say 6, it would be 6. Let's just do it this way this time. 6 plus 2 would be to 8. Now there's only going to be 7 of them, so I'm going to go into this and say minus 7. And then if I did that, I can say this is going to be the 1 plus 2, and this is going to be equal to the 3 plus 2, and this is going to be 5 plus 2. And so that goes up to 7. So if I copy that down, so what would I be holding down then to build this chord, this 5-note chord from a Nashville number system, the 6, the 1, the 3, the 5, the 7. If we convert that to modes, it would be the Aeolian, the Ionian, the Phrygian, the Mixolydian, and the Crazy Locrian. Crazy Loc. All right. So what if we did then a 5-note, a 6-note chord. Let's do a 6-note chord. All right, normally, oh wait, I'm trying to get my cheat sheet in order. Okay, so normally we would call that an A minor 11. Now, so What would that be? Why? Because the 11 is equivalent to the 4. So there's only 7 notes in the scale degree. We're naming it by scale degree. We went up to the 9 and then to the 11 instead of going to the 2 and the 4. The minor scale is funny in that you would think that the 9, which is equivalent to the 2, would be a minor 2, but it's not. It's major. And you would think the minor name would make the 9 and the 11 minor, but it doesn't, because the minor name only for some reason applies to the 3 and the 7. So the 9 and the 11 are still major. So we'll get into that more when we get to the intervals, but notice it's deceptively complex, and it doesn't need to be, because you could just say, look, it's an Aeolian A5, which would mean it's a 6-note Aeolian chord, which means we're starting on A and we're going up 5 modal whole steps. And if it was the root, we can call it an AA5. So what would that be? If I go back on over here and we looked at a scale degrees system, we're going to say, all right, this would be Aeolian. That would be the 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and then 11. So the 11 is equivalent to the 4 that we skipped. All right, let's go back on over. Go back on over, and we're going to say, all right, so if we did the modal, what are like the modal half steps, which are equivalent to the scale degrees if we measured it like properly, and not remake the 1, right? We'd say this is going to be the Aeolian, and we'd say the first point is 0 because it's the 6th modal name. But I'm not going to measure. I'm just going to call that the node that I'm measuring from, and then count the next one, which is the 2, and then up by 2 to 4, and then up by 2 to 6, and then up by 2 to 8, and then up by 2 to 10. How do I convert that to scale degrees? Well, the scale degrees are all off by 1. So if I make the node that we're on not the 6, but the 1, then we would just, it would be 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. I'll go ahead and let it do it this time. This time it's okay, I guess. And then, but I don't want to do that because now the 1 is what I want it to be. I want it to be the 6 because I don't want to rename it. So if I kept it as the 6, then I can easily name the system by nodes, not by notes, not by changing scale degrees that are rotating all around the place. No, that's craziness. By just the nodes, the continents. It's going to be 6 plus 2 minus 7, Ionian. And let's just do it this way this time. This plus 2, and this will be equal to this plus 2. And let's get rid of that. And then this is going to be equal to this plus 2. And let's get rid of that. And then this is going to be this plus 2 minus 7. Boom. Let's get rid of that. So if I was to hold down the nodes, impossible to do on a guitar, but we might pick up that last note and drop the ones in the middle, which we could define if we wanted to, which we'll talk more about later. But we're going to say it's the 6, 1, 3, 5, 7, 2. Nashville number system, which converts to the modes because the Nashville number system is an absolute mode system. Even if you want to pretend it's not, you're using the absolute modes. That's what's happening. So it's the Aeolian, Ionian, Phrygian, Mixolydian, Locrian, and the Dorian. Those are the continents we're holding down that we just gave a number to because we didn't want to say the Greek names, and we like to use math because math is helpful. And the Greeks would be okay with that because the ancient Greeks were big on math too. So they're not like totally insulted that we call them a number so that we can, because it's functional, as long as it's functional. Anyway, so now we're going to be on a 7-note chord. What would we normally call that? It would be an A minor, but then we have to have a flat 13. Okay, so this is weird. Okay, so we're in a minor key. The minor only applies to the 1, to the 3 and the 7 for some reason, because we'll get into this more later, but the 4 is perfect and the 1 is perfect. And so then, but then the 9 is major, which you would think it would have to be minor, but it's actually okay that it's major because the main minor mode, the minor scale, actually has a major second in it for some reason. And then the 11 is a perfect 4, is equivalent to the perfect 4, and the perfect 4 is perfect. So we don't need to flatten that one. because there's no major and minor, it's perfect. But then the 13 is equivalent to the 6, and the 6 should be flattened and is not flattened by the minor because the minor only applies to the 3 and the 7. It doesn't apply to the 13. See how that's that's a lot of things you have to know to make sense of that. Wouldn't it make? I mean, it'd be a lot easier to make sense of saying, look, it's a Aeolian 6, meaning it's a 7-note Aeolian chord. That you know exactly what that means. That means you take 7 notes every other note, starting from the A node, which is the Aeolian node. That's that's way easier. Okay. Try to explain this. Try to explain like what in the world is happening with that. We'll get into it more. We'll be able to explain it once we get to the intervals. But we'll just intuitively, this makes more sense. What would it look like if, from a scale degree standpoint, if we took all of them, we would say this is going to be the 1. This will be the 3. This would be the 5. This would be the 7. This would be the 9. This would be the 11. And then this would be the 13, equivalent to the 6. Okay, so let's go on over here. Let's say if we did it by just taking every other note, we could say, all right, this would be the Aeolian. All right, and this is going to be, then we start at 0, which is the 6, and we just go up by 2 modal half steps, 1 modal whole step, another 2 to get to 4, another 2 to get to 6, another 2 to get to 8, another 2 to get to 10, another 2 to get to 12. And if we convert that to a scale degree, the system, we would say, well, now I'm going to make it the 1, and then we just go up. I'll let it do it this time. We just go up, so it's all going to be 1 down. So it's the 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13. But the 9, 11, 13 are equivalent to the 2, 4, and 6. But it made the 6 the 1, and I don't want to make the 6 the 1 because I want to name the 6 the 6. And then if I did that, if I kept it as the 6, then I could name all of the things that I'm holding down, all of the locations, all of the continents by an unchanging, permanent, you could call it Nashville number system, but the Nashville number system is the absolute mode system. That's what it is. So it'd be 6 plus 2 minus 7, Ionian. This would be equal to the 1 plus 2. This would be equal to the 3 plus 2. This, okay, stop doing that. This is going to be 5 plus 2. This, and then I told you, do it again and see what happens. 7 plus 2 minus 7. Oh, my empty threat didn't work. Okay, I'm gonna, wait a second. 7 plus 2, and then 7, so let me do that again. And then this equals 7 plus 2 minus 7, okay? And then this is gonna be equal to this plus 2. Okay, I think I got that. So that means if I play this giant chord, how could I number it? Well, it's going to be, you just hold down the 6, the 1, the 3, the 5, the 7, the 2, and the 4, which translates to the names of the Aeolian, the Ionian, the Phrygian, the Mixolydian, the Locrian, and finally the Lydian. That's how it works. All right, next time we're going to apply this out to the last one, the last round, which is the Locrian. You might say, no one plays in Locrian. Why would you even bother? Because you need to know the Locrian chord, because you still want to use the Locrian chord, even if you're not playing in Locrian, because that's going to lead you beautifully back to the Ionian. And so you have to, it has some good features, even though it's crazy. Don't just dismiss the crazy guy. Try to glean something out of the crazy guy. Try to see if he's got something to offer. This Locrian's got something to offer.